So, Tree Girl, Julianne, it's lovely to see you here.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about, we've both written books. I want to talk to you about your book, Tree Girls, Intimate Encounters with Wild Nature, which you kindly sent to me, and it went on a little pilgrimage, didn't it?
It did. It went around the world.
It went around the world. Heaven knows why it went to Australia, but it went to Australia, it came back again. And then I got it out of the box, and then I was showing friends sitting outside on a lovely summer's evening, and left it outside, and there was a storm that night. And it poured with rain, and the book swelled up, so it was about this thick.
Wow.
So I got another copy.
Wow.
And it's a beautiful production.
Yeah.
So tell me, most of the people who see this film perhaps are not going to know anything about your work. What are you able to describe your work? What do you do?
My mission is to invite people into intimacy with nature and to help them remember that there's no separation between humans and nature. So however people want to explore what intimacy with the more than human world is, I'm just giving them permission via my photography is mostly self-portrait work of myself intertwined with trees all over the world, and some photos of other women. And I do men, but I'm focusing on women right now. People see a big tree and then, there's a woman in there. Oh, and I'm trying to have a camouflaged
And
look, yeah.
Yes, and of course what it does very well is it gives the scale. You've had encounters with some extraordinary trees. I mean, they're huge. And then there's this little figure of you entwined with them. And then, of course, the striking thing is that you're naked. And so somebody might say, well, why does she have to take her clothes off? Why do you have to take your clothes off?
Because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Simply, it's beautiful. Yeah. And for me, it's an ecstatic spiritual experience I'm having while I'm doing the photography. It's very authentic. It's not posed. I actually take the time to be with this tree, and it feels great. Like all my senses are enlivened. So it's my spiritual practice.
It's your spiritual practice. Now, this is really interesting. So you're saying my spiritual practice is being naked with trees.
Yes.
Yeah. You realize that sounds really weird for a lot of people, don't you? Yeah?
Some people get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I spend a lot of time with the trees and with wild nature, being naked. The whole process, the whole photography process, it's the creative process, right? So it's not just being a naturist or a nudist and you're out, you're walking around in nature. Like there's a whole process I go through with the camera and setting it up and getting into place and taking the shot.
And so, but this is really interesting. So let's explore this some more. So, is something happening when you're going through this practice that would be different if you were wearing clothes?
Yeah.
Yeah. What would the difference be?
I would feel more separate from. It's true. When I take my clothes off, I am completely vulnerable to all the elements, to my skin getting scratched up, to other animals, to insects biting me. It's a vulnerability. It's a humbling. I return to a state of humility as opposed to human,
pride or arrogance or
dominating.
defendedness as well.
Yeah.
Because clothes defend us, don't they? They defend us and protect us. So you're deliberately unprotecting yourself. You're deliberately opening yourself up and becoming vulnerable. And doesn't it get kind of scratchy and uncomfortable just at a purely practical level?
I'm so used to it now. It doesn't really. It's very rare that I get scratched up or bit by something or injured in any way. It's super. I've sort of
bitten by something. I can imagine hugging a tree and then going ooch.
Yeah. I do have some stories. But it's very sensual to feel my skin against the bark of another, the skin of another being, which happens to be bark. And often there's duff and there's dust and there's little, it's messy. Nature is messy. It's not it's not neat and tidy. But I enjoy it. I enjoy
something happens. You feel great,
something.
and it
Yeah.
feels
Yeah.
it feels more than just by the using the term spiritual and spiritual practice. What that suggests to me is you feel something more than just physical, sensual, if you like. You feel that there's a deeper dimension to it. And you mentioned that you were working particularly with women to do this. Now, many women have experiences of violation. A huge proportion of women, very sad statistics. So being vulnerable is a very, very big issue for them. How? Tell me a little bit about your work with women in this respect.
I think women generally have a fear of being judged by other people. Most women aren't used to being seen and honored and accepted for their beauty. And I've had women who, actually, started shaking in their body because I was witnessing them. And it wasn't out of any sort of fear. It was, like I'm actually being seen and accepted and witnessed for who I am. And it was
being
a little
allowed,
jolt. Being allowed.
Being allowed to be themselves. Because it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
The idea that you can't be yourself without being covered up is a very strange one. That if you're just yourself, you're not good enough. You're not legal. If you're just yourself, you're not legal. To be legal, you must be yourself plus this piece of cloth.
Yeah.
Which at a philosophical level is very strange indeed. But of course there's a whole weight of shame that people have about their bodies that comes not only from cultural conditioning and history and religion and so on, but also perhaps from childhood experiences. And then any experiences of violation that they may have had at the hands of other people. And you add that all together and something very simple and which should be innocent, which is just being yourself without any covering up, just being with another, just as you might cuddle an animal or something like that, or a little baby. Suddenly it becomes charged with so much more,
Right. Well, the thing is, Philip, I feel completely safe naked in nature, whereas I don't feel safe walking down the street as a woman. Right, in an urban environment, I think we've inherited that as women, that we could be violated at any time.
Yeah.
But in nature, I feel completely safe and held. And not only that, there's an expansion of my consciousness where I'm no longer me, my ego self, me, person, Julianne. I'm flesh and bone, and I'm an animal, and I'm my spirit, and I'm bigger than just my personality when I'm walking down the street and I'm like, oh, this is who I am and I should look a certain way and da-da-da. When I'm in nature, like, it just breaks that. I'm just become one of the many millions of organisms that's in the forest.
Okay.
So it's liberating to not be in the human mind.
Yes. You become more than human, or you become your animal self. There are all sorts of ways of describing it, I suppose. I mean, I had an experience of trekking in New Zealand and coming to a great river that it was in flood, so I had to swim across it. So I had to take all my clothes off and swim across the river. And then when I got to the other side, I was wet, and I had nothing to dry myself with. And I thought, well, maybe I don't need to because there's nobody here. New Zealand is very sparsely populated in many places, and so I went trekking just with I put all my clothes in my backpack, and I had this wonderful feeling of being. Sometimes I felt like an animal. I almost felt like kind of walking, crouching and sort of, but I felt like an animal, and it does. I think it does something very interesting. It does, on the one hand, you become more aware of yourself because you sort of every pore of your skin is kind of receiving the breeze and the sunshine and all the rest of it. You become more yourself, but you sort of become less of yourself as well because you also blend with your scenery. Very interesting. So I really get what you're saying. And so you traveled around the world taking photographs of the most extraordinary trees. But in this book, you've included these photographs, which are just very beautiful. But also, there's a lot of text because you are also an expert in trees. You're an arborist, are you?
Yes, I'm a certified arborist with the International Society
So can you
of
trim our
Arboriculture.
trees in the garden?
I could.
Yeah?
I could.
I mean, is that what you mean by arborist? Somebody who goes around
yeah, an
trimming trees?
arborist is a tree doctor. They
Yeah.
work with trees from birth till death. Many arborists are just tree trimmers. Many arborists diagnose disease.
If you could be a tree, if you could scrunch your eyes up and open them again and you're a tree, you'd be an oak tree.
I'd be an oak tree.
Yeah. And so in the book, you've included material about trees.
Yes, it's the natural history. So there's 50 species of trees in 13 countries that I've traveled to. So there's the natural history of the tree and the ethnobotany and the conservation status of each species. Because people want to know. People want to know, how old do those trees get? Like, how big do they get? And do animals interact with them? And can I eat them? And what did people used to do with them? And so it's part science, part art, part eco-psychology, part spirituality. It's an interdisciplinary book because trees are interdisciplinary. The living world is interdisciplinary. You can't just have one aspect of it. It's just fascinating.
That's fine, and it's got a beautiful introduction by Fred Hagen,
Yes.
who is a great expert on the yew tree in particular.
Yes, he is.
He's like an old yew himself.
He is.
And he's written a great foreword to the book. Do you think the trees have a message for us that they're trying to get across?
I don't think it's one message. The messages I get from trees are very short and simple, and I think that's part of the message. Things are just very, very simple, right? We make things very, very complicated in the human brain. And really, most of the time, if I ask a tree something, it just comes down to love. If I have a question about what I should do, it just can't, like I just asked a linden tree before I came to see you. I said, what do I need to know about this time with Philip? What do I need to know? And it was just like, be in your heart. That was just, it's very much a lot of times about love. Love yourself. Love others.
It's interesting, isn't it? When you think of love, what is love? Love is giving. It's just you radiate. When you love somebody or something, the dynamic is from here or from the self out to the person. You're giving, loving and giving. And that's what trees do.
Yes.
I mean, they're just giving oxygen for us to breathe, and fruit, and wood to burn, and they're just constantly giving, so they're wonderful symbols of love. And then there are certain trees which seem to have such gentle hearts, such powerful hearts. I was going to say gentle, but powerful in a way. Like there's the Pahutakawa tree in New Zealand, which has these big, beautiful red flowers, and it's just, you sit in it and you feel bathed in love. And so that's interesting. I think you're right about the way we make everything so complex.
And I would say that I found that the older the trees are, the more gracious they are. Sort of like an old, loving grandparent or great-grandparent. And if I may tell a story, the tree on the cover, it's an African baobab. So usually what happens is I go on these treasure hunts to find these trees. And I'll see a picture in a book or on the internet or something, and I'll go and I'll find it. And, usually immediately I'm just taken aback by the grandness of the life force energy that I can actually feel from the tree. And so I'm trying to be really humble and in my human self. And, usually in my mind or spirit to spirit, I'll say, wow, tree, you are amazing. You are, oh wow, like
it's worship, isn't it? I find when you come to a huge, beautiful tree, the idea of tree work, I'm kind of not into the term worship really. I didn't worship stuff, when in the presence of a huge tree, I feel like worshipping. I feel like bowing
Right.
down and saying,
Right.
oh, "You are beautiful.
Right.
You are great. You
Yeah.
are wonderful."
Yeah, and every time the tree is like, no, 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 no.
yeah,
There's no me.
yeah,
It's not about me. It's like I'm only. This is the tree. You know what I got. I got this complete download from this tree.
yeah.
And that, I was shown the interconnectedness of all life, that this tree is only that big and grand and powerful because it's connected to literally everything. The soil, the rocks, the microorganisms, the plants over there, the trees over there, the animals, the mountains, the stars, and it was like this super download. And, so what I got was that the trees don't see themselves as individual beings. I mean, in a sense they are, but they know that they're only that way because they're connected to literally, right? There's no, where can we say that the tree ends and the water begins? If in an ecosystem, right? There is no space, an air. Where does air end and the tree begin? And same with fire. It's connected to all.
And
of
what
the
I love
elements.
is, this concept of forest breathing, this idea that there's particularly promoted in Japan.
Forest bathing.
Yes, forest bathing.
Yes.
Yeah, and apparently it comes from Germany originally, from the Naturheilpraktik tradition that came out of the whole life reform, Lebensreform movements, in the 19th century and 20th century. But what they find is so the doctor will prescribe you some forest bathing. I think you need some forest bathing. So off you go and you walk in the forest and you feel better. And you're breathing in tree. And it goes into your blood. So microorganism particles from the tree that
chemicals.
The trees chemicals.
They're phytoncides. They're called phytoncides.
Phytoncides.
The side similar to pesticide.
All right. Yeah.
So that.
Phyton, Phyton.
Yeah. So you're breathing in the chemicals that trees use to build their immune system to fight off pests. You're breathing those in, and those actually improve your immune system.
Isn't that
extraordinary?
They've done tests. It's mind-blowing. So it goes into your lungs, you breathe it in, and through your lungs it's transferred to your blood. So you circulating through your body is stuff that's been in the tree. It's a part of the tree. So there is no separation. This idea that there's just this constant exchange. So you could say that, in your hugging a tree, when you take your clothes off and you hug a tree, you're breathing in the tree from really close. You're completely at a kind of subtle energy level, your subtle body, if you like, your energy body. There's nothing in the way between your energy body and the energy body of the tree.
So I see them as my lovers, really. It's a very sensual experience. I wouldn't say it was sexual. Some of the photographs can be seen as erotic, but it's love, it's intimacy. In the grandest sense, when you have an intimate relationship with your beloved, it's not just it covers all territory. It's not just sexual. It's intellectual. It's spiritual. It's heart-centered. It's there's trust there. There's so much going on, and so what I'm really encouraging people is to bridge intimacy with more than just humans. That the trees can be our companions, our allies. Resources of wisdom, resources of knowledge, resources of love.
This sounds like a druid speaking.
It's amazing. Yeah. But this is, all my personal experience. I mean, I've probably, been with, hundreds and hundreds of trees and 100 different species.
Do you know Annie Sprinkle's
art
project going around and marrying rivers and marrying trees and things like that?
Yeah. It's very similar.
Similar sort of idea.
Yeah, there's an eco-eroticism movement.
Yeah, so say something about that because what somebody might say is, wow, these are beautiful photographs, but this person is hung up on themselves because there are just photographs of themselves everywhere. So how do you respond to that?
All I can do is document my experience to hopefully inspire other people.
Because other people can do the same thing. They can be inspired by it.
Yeah.
And obviously the logistics of traveling the world and then finding somebody to be by the tree, but
I mean, I'm documenting my spiritual experience too, and then I have this beautiful image, and I can remember. Oh, I remember, Philip. I remember the texture of every species of tree. I remember that. I remember that moment, and that is burned into my soul. That experience, and no one else can have what I had. This is my own experience. So the photograph is just a document. It's a documentation of like, oh, this is my beautiful experience with this being, this other being.
You said that do you work with other women and trees? In other words, so they will work through their issues of shame and fear and all the rest of it, and then will embrace a tree, and then you will photograph this, and then this will hopefully be a treasured kind of object for them. Yeah.
And I mean, there's a lot of interest in it. Women especially really get it. That whole thing about women maybe being closer to nature. I think there's really something about that. Usually men see my work and they say, oh, that's very interesting. And that's very nice, composition there. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm not going to notice that you're nude. But women are like, whatever is going on in that picture, I want that in my life.
Interesting.
They want to come home. I mean, all people want to come home. And really, that's what the book is about.
It's about coming home to yourself, but more importantly, to nature.
To wild nature, as our natural home.
Yes.
That we become over-civilized.
Yeah.
And that's not to say, there is a romantic quality about it, but it's not to over-romanticize it. Because there are challenges in the natural world, and that's why we've built houses to protect ourselves from pests and getting bit by things and scratched and things like that. So I don't want to generalize it, but for thousands and thousands of years we lived intimately with the land, and the trees were our neighbors, and resources, not just for taking.
And so this is really a project to help us, as you said, to rewild, to become wild.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Julianne. Thank you, Tree Girl. That's wonderful.
Thank you,
so much.
Philip.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Right.